This series 2 of Downton starts in the middle of the First World War, which means really 1916, and we go straight into the Battle of the Somme. And the very first scene of episode 1, we're in the trenches, so it really firmly roots us in what's going on in the wider world that isn't the world of Downton. We see gunfire and people pouring over the top of a trench and the muddy conditions, and so we cut back. So we have this marvellous contrast between what's going on at Downton and what's going on in the world of the trenches.
Help me do battle with this monstrosity.
We're very lucky because Ros Ebbutt knows a great deal about uniforms. She's worked on a lot of uniform dramas before, but if you've been a soldier like I have, all the time when there are uniforms in wear, my eyes, like a military adjutant who's always responsible for detail, are whizzing around the actors, supporting the people who are in costume, because I've got an eye for this stuff, making sure that the badges of rank are on at the right time. There was one point right at the beginning when we were about to shoot something with Hugh Bonneville in his new uniform. And I walked round, it's one of these cases where I was just a little bit late on set. I walked round and I thought, he's not wearing any badges of rank. And they'd already done one take, and I just said, stop. And they had to hold the whole of the filming until we got the badges of rank on, as they should be.
This is so like being at home.
You don't always get every tiny detail right, but my goodness, you try. And you look and you keep watching to try and make sure that the detail is properly attended to.
I managed to find things for the trenches because I had to have 3 sets of everything. The ones who got very muddy, or there was any sort of incident happened to them, we needed to make certain that they had things so we could, reshoot.
Get these bodies away!
We took the dirt from the trenches and then we matched it to makeup that we have, and so that when we made everybody up, they looked like they were part of the trenches. So the main leads didn't look like they had makeup on, because there's nothing worse than you see a lot of grimy, injured people looking absolutely marvellous, and in comes the lead with a smudge on the end of his nose. So we avoided any of that. We wanted them all to look like they were living and having to deal with the horrors of the trenches.
Everyone wore 2 layers of thermal wear and all these clothes, and actually the puttees, the strips of fabric that wind up sealing the boots to the breeches or trousers, actually help to keep the water out.
It's a lot more comfortable than a footman's. The footman with a high collar's killer, shaving rash every day. So this isn't too bad. And the puttees, they're quite reassuring now. Do you know what I mean? They make me feel stable and secure, and I've taken that into life. Better than last year. The belt keeps me belly in, which is good. Yeah, shiny buttons. What more could you ask for?
I'm not under Mr. Carson's command now, Your Lordship.
The soldier in him is reawakened, and he's dying. He's itching to get back into active service, to join the club again, the gang. That in the first episode we see him going to a mess dinner and he feels completely at home again. And then of course it's turned on its head, and he realises he's actually they only want him to be a figurehead.
Grantham, you see, just to know I'm with you all, to sense that I belong here.
When Hugh is wearing the uniform of the Grenadier Guards in the evening, and that's called mess kit, and we needed to make sure that the medals were right, that he could have been at the coronation of the various kings he's wearing the right medals for, and also that he'd been in the South African War, and we got those medals absolutely right.
The position's only an honorary one. Nobody expects you to go to war.
An honorary one?
We thought it'd cheer things up a bit to have the Lord Lieutenant at our table. And so it does. We're very glad to welcome you here.
All the medals on this show are broadly guided by my suggestions based upon the service that people have done. I've given myself the Military Cross because I lack the ability to hold myself back. Also, I've got the Queen Victoria South Africa Medal and the Edward VII South Africa Medal, and finally the Indian General Service Medal, which just fits in with the time of service that I, as a colonel, and on this rank at this stage, would have had.
This insignia is the Duke of Manchester's own regiment crest. Invented, and the crest drawn by Alastair Bruce, who is a member of the College of Arms in London, and he designs coats of arms for a living, and he designed the Middleton family crest recently. And this is, the finest costume that a soldier has back home or away from the front. I'm wearing these égaulettes, they're called, They do make me look a bit like Michael Jackson, but yes, they're quite fancy.
Can we go to ones?
It's a very strange period because it's like for fashion-wise, for the girls, for instance, it's sort of like a black hole. Everything comes to a bit of a stop because the war has completely taken over and it's a very, very different sort of time. But then again, you have all the guys turning up in uniform looking, you know, pretty hot.
Clothes were affected dramatically by what was going on in the war. Women's clothing starts to change. It already had, but it's the fact that all their men are in uniform affects how they feel about what they're wearing and how they can support their boys in the front by wearing quasi-uniforms themselves.
They adapted clothes to look like uniforms because they were voluntary sector. And it has such an effect, and it's so interesting.
It's not Paul Branson's fault.
But what is the point of Mamma's soirees? What are they for?
It's a no-nonsense type outfit, which we had made, which is very much based on what was an original. She wears when she goes down to the hospital and takes the jacket off and puts an apron on so she can muck in, and she's a very hands-on woman.
Shockingly, I mean, all the nurses still had to don on corsets. Which, considering the working hours that they had, that's quite a big ask. But I love wearing the uniform. I feel frustrated when I have to get back in an evening dress. It's such an iconic image, the nurse's uniform of that time. You have a sense of responsibility, and putting it on feels this is her most comfortable.
No, it's more savage and more cool than I could have imagined, but I feel useful for the first time in my life, and that must be a good thing. Are you busy?
No, of course not.
During the war, women had to work, so it was not possible to continue in restricted clothing. And this is shown as we progress in both classes, but particularly the working classes have to work and the women work, and they've never worn trousers before, except maybe in the fishing industry, and they're now in factories. And this gradually filters through to the upper classes who start the war thinking that their life will be as it has always been. And within a few years, life changes dramatically for them.
Don't look so bewildered. It's simple. I will drive the tractor.
I get to wear trousers this year. It's very exciting, and they're beautiful trousers. I was very excited. When I tried them on, they were from out of Africa. Meryl Streep had worn, and I was very excited that I was going to wear them. And then they decided to remake them. So I was gutted when I came back for the second fitting, and they weren't actually Meryl Streep's trousers anymore. But then John, the costume guy at Cosprop, brought a load of Meryl Streep's blouses, so I was happy then. So I think I wore one of her blouses from out of Africa. It's great to be in something a bit more practical.
Would you like me to teach you to drive?
Not much.
Even in the trousers, even on the farm, I was wearing a day corset.
Once you've put women into comfortable clothes who are not used to them, and they've been able to work practically, they're not going to go back to teetering around in hobble skirts. I mean, that was it for them. There was no looking back once they'd realised, A, it was empowering, and B, comfortable.
The style certainly feels more relaxed in this series. The skirts become less, I guess all of it is less constrained than last year. A little bit of ankle is starting to show. There is far less glam this time round. There aren't any huge feathers in the hair or the jewellery. It feels like there's a lot less jewellery this time because it just wouldn't have been appropriate.
The difficulty for us was recreating the clothes, because modern fabrics don't have the same weight and quality. There are dresses that are falling apart which have got vintage beading. So we've tried, particularly with Maggie and with Cora, to use panels of vintage beading and then make the dresses round them, and you get the quality. And also for Maggie to use jet, so it sparkles.
So now I'm an outsider who need not be consulted.
Since you put it like that, yes.
With the hair, Nosh, again, fantastic. It's a complete construction piece. Takes about an hour and a half to do every day, and I love it. So it's great. And it's one of those things where you put the costume on and it really does help you get into character.
It's like a construction, a confection, really. So it's half her own hair and half a piece. And she just looks very, very modern and rather beautiful. She's got this very pale but pretty face. It just all sort of came together, the hair on that high on her head. Very different to Mary, who's very much down here. And of course, she's the light to her dark. And it just balanced really beautifully.
What people wear is important to what they present, generally to the outside world. And the same applies in 1916 as applies now, although the fashions are more relaxed and the rules aren't there in the same way as they were, which now doesn't apply. It's a different world, very different world.